Welcome to Northeastern Tennessee. Hi, everybody. I'm Sheldon. I'm an alcoholic. It's an honor and a privilege to be here, and I'd like to thank the committee for putting this thing on. It's a big deal. It's hard work, and this is the first one, and I think you guys have done a great job. Wasn't this amazing last night? You guys have a good time? Very, very cool. It's so funny because I'll probably end up telling the Falskin story now, Craig, and I wasn't gonna because my sponsor's in the room, and so now I'm like stuck between the rock and a hard place. Do I do it to make Craig happy? Do I do it to not do it to make my sponsor happy? I've never, ever, ever not done anything just to make my sponsor happy, so I doubt that'll have much effect. Anyway, so I've been asked to come and share with you guys my experience on the first couple of steps, on step 1 and step 2, and what is this thing, alcoholism that I have? It was so confusing for me for such a long time. For me to imagine that what was wrong with me was some kind of a disease just seemed silly. What was wrong with me was that I drank too much, got in too much trouble, spilled stuff, broke stuff, insulted people, lost jobs, couldn't pay the rent. But I was the guy that was doing it. It was me that was making the mess. And for me to think that this was some kind of a disease was just silly. But I didn't want to keep doing it. And I couldn't seem to be able to stop. With everything that was in me, with everything in my body, every fiber, every piece of character that I had, which, as you'll find out, wasn't much character. But every piece of fiber that I had, everything that was in me, everything I could muster, I couldn't seem to put the plug in the jug. I couldn't seem to stop drinking. I couldn't seem to stop burning my life to the ground. And it made no sense to me as to why. So I'll start out by telling you this. I remember my first drink. Now, it doesn't make me an alcoholic. You may or may not remember your first drink. It doesn't matter whether or not you do. It's just interesting to me that I remember my first drink. I love peanut M&Ms. I don't know if any of you guys like those things, right? They're rainbow color, shiny. I love the shape, the chocolate, the outside candy crisp, and then the nutty flavor in them. I love peanut M&Ms. I don't remember my first one. It stands to reason that there was peanut M&M number 1, doesn't it? All right. It didn't have the impact on me that my first drink did. I remember my first drink. I was with a kid called Barry. Barry was 2 years older than me. I was 9 and Barry was 11. And because Barry was 2 years older than me, that made him instantly cool. And I would have done anything Barry wanted to do because I wanted desperately to fit in. I'm a 9-year-old kid, and I don't really know that there's much wrong with me, but I tell you, I don't feel like I fit in the world. I've always been kind of short. I'm not a tall guy. My son, who just turned 16, is now taller than me. And I was a big deal. As he was catching me, I would constantly be going, come on, back to back, let's measure each other, right? Because it was just so exciting that this kid was going to be taller than me. And finally the day came when he was taller than me, and I was like, man, you're taller than me. And he looked me dead in the eye and he goes, what's the big deal, Dad? You're not even average. So I'm short, right? I've always had a weight problem. I'm short and I'm fat and I'm ugly and I'm a Jewish kid. I grew up in a Jewish home. We were never practicing. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But I grew up in a non-Jewish neighborhood, so I'm short and I'm fat and I'm ugly and I'm Jewish and I don't like me very much. I don't feel like I fit in the world. I'm just this awkward kid. And I meet this guy that's 2 years older than me, and I desperately want to fit in with him and his friends. I just want to feel like I belong because I'm so awkward and so out of place. And Barry wants to go drink. And we go stand in front of a liquor store, and we're hustling to get someone to go in and buy some booze, and somebody does, and they get us a bottle of Old English apple cider. It's just apple juice with a kick, right? And we get this bottle of Old English apple cider, and we go in this wooded area behind the liquor store. Barry takes the top off the bottle, and he takes a big swig of this Old English apple cider and passes me the bottle. I get that bottle in my hand, and I don't know what I'm doing. I've never had a drink before. I put it to my mouth. I take a big swig. And what happened to me next was going to happen to me almost every time I drank from that day until the last drink that I took. I took a big swig on that bottle of Old English apple cider, and I puked out of my nose. Because I'm a nose puker. I'm not very good at drinking, I got to tell you. Some of you are like experts, right? You carry a little bottle around in your back pocket, and you drink more than everybody else. And when you drink, you're the guys and gals that when you drink, you can dance better than when you're sober, and you can talk to the opposite sex better than when you're sober. And if you're a musician, maybe you play guitar or drums better when you're drunk than when you're sober. Maybe you, God help us all, maybe you drive better. I'm not that guy. I'm a pig, and I'm a slob, and I break things, and I drop things, and I embarrass myself, and I embarrass you, and the book says that when we drink, we are often dangerously or disgustingly antisocial. I'm not very dangerous, but I am disgusting. I'm the kind of guy that when I get drunk, I pee on the couch and hit on your mom. I came to after a night of drinking at this couple's house, and as I opened my eyes, I'm sleeping on their couch, I opened my eyes to the husband and wife staring at me, which is never good. And the minute I opened my eyes, the wife stood up with disgust, turned around, and walked away. And I said to him, "What's wrong with her?" And he said, "You don't remember." I said, "I don't remember. What happened?" And he looked me dead in the eye and he said, "Last night, while you were drinking, you peed on our couch and hit on her mom." So I really am a pee on the couch and hit on your mom kind of alcoholic. But I'm in that wooded area with this kid Barry, and I get some of that booze down inside of me, and something happens to me that was magical. Something happens to me that's hard to describe. I mean, nothing really happened, but something happened inside of me. Because I'm this short, fat, awkward Jewish kid with a big nose that nobody likes. My mom and dad had been divorced for a number of years, and that was miserable for me. It was very difficult. Back then it wasn't like it is today, where divorce was more acceptable, and we were in a small Jewish community that made it even more unacceptable. And so I'm just this kid with just all this stuff going on. What it felt like inside for me is it felt like when that booze hit me and I got to feel alcohol start to course through my veins, it felt like, I don't know, like my mom and dad got remarried. It felt like I grew a few inches. It felt like I lost 30 pounds. Felt like I got a nose job. Felt like my foreskin grew back. I want you to know that I'm probably ashamed of that joke. And I'm sure that there'll be some amends for me to make later. I'm getting that look from my sponsor. You know the look. But really what happened was when that alcohol hit my system, and when I started to feel the effect of that alcohol, is that this awkward, embarrassed, uncomfortable kid, for the first time ever, it felt like I was able to breathe. It felt like I'd been holding on to something. It felt like like I was somehow, there was something different, something wrong with me, like I didn't fit in the world. And when that booze hit my system, it felt like all of a sudden, whew. And I tell you, when you feel like that for the very first time, I don't care if you're 9 years old like I was, if you're older than that, if you wait until you're in your 20s or 30s, when you feel that for the first time, for me, what happened for me is that I knew that I was going to do that as much as I could, whenever I could, from that day forwards. I made a decision that I was going to be a drinker because it was too magical. It was too important. It was it felt like what had been missing in my life this whole time up to that point is what had been missing had been alcohol. I didn't get to drink every day when I was 9 years old. Oh, when I was 10 years old or 11 years old, you live in my mom's house. She's paying a little bit of attention, but I got drunk probably once more that year, a couple, 3 times when I was 10, 4 or 5 times when I was 11. But by the time I was 16 years old, I was drinking something, taking something, doing something every single day, always. And it was going to be that way for the next 10 or 12 years of my life. I'm an alcoholic. I have alcoholism. It is the only disease that I have. But I'm not a specialist. I'm a pig. And alcoholics, we shouldn't do anything that affects us from the neck up. And I started a journey that included drugs and alcohol, and like I said, it became a daily adventure for me. I remember I love drinking. I'm not very good at it. I already told you that. I'm just not very good at it, but I love it. I remember this one particular time, this one memory I have in my head of how amazing drinking was for me. This is probably in 1984, 1985. I'm in Northern California in Shoreline Amphitheater just outside of San Jose, and the Grateful Dead are playing. It's a real steep amphitheater. I'm at the back of this amphitheater, and I've been drinking all day, and I'm on 4 hits of window pane, and the band is starting to play. It's a misty, kind of half rainy day, And Bob Weir yells out, "It looks like rain." And the band starts to play, and I'm having a spiritual experience. The likes of which no 12-step call has ever given me. Ever given me. If it still felt like it did that day, I'd still be drinking. I tell you, I love the way that booze makes me feel. I love how connected I feel. I love how the color seems to come back in the world. There's a great line in a movie, I think it's The Days of Wine and Roses, where the woman has stood at the window. I don't know if you've ever seen this movie or remember this scene. And she's been drinking, and her husband's begging her to quit drinking. And she turns to him and she says, "You don't understand. When I look out of this window, when I'm sober, the world is gray and black and white. And when I look out of this window when I'm drinking, the world is full of color." And that's the way it was for me with drinking. That when I was drinking, it seemed like the world was a place that I could love and enjoy. It seemed like everything made sense. It seemed like life was a gift. But in a state of abstinence, separated from alcohol, it just seemed too painful, too drab. It just seemed boring at best. So I'm on my journey, drinking and doing my thing, and I had some great success along the way. I was very, very lucky. I was actually a fairground pitchman, selling Ginsu knives at state and county fairs. But wait, there's more. And by a weird set of circumstances, a weird little bits of luck along the way, I ended up being the national spokesperson for a company on QVC, and I would go on live television, I would travel the country, and I had this amazing opportunity, and I was like Bill Wilson in his story. I had arrived. I was 21 years old, and I had a career track that was just going to go straight up like a rocket ship. But unfortunately, I couldn't stop drinking long enough to be able to show up to work and do the things they wanted me to do. When they fired me from that job, and I know why they fired me. We always do, don't we? Right? And it's never the drinking, is it? They fired me from that job because there was a guy there called Bernard. Bernard didn't like Jews. Of course, they could not put on my separation paperwork, "We're terminating him because he's a Jew." So what they said they didn't feel it was appropriate that the national spokesperson for the company would be an alcoholic crack addict, which I thought was an overreaction. I got another good job because I had a great resume, so it was easy to get another good. I can get jobs. We're good interviewers, aren't we? We can always get that. It's showing up for 2 or 3 days in a row. That's awkward for us, right? I get another good job and I lose that job, and another good job and I lose that job, and now I'm 24 years old and I can't get a job. I'm 24 years old and I had gone back into the car business. I'd been a car salesman before I got the lucky break that I got, and I went back into the car business, and I'm showing up for a week or two, and then I'm switching from one dealership to another dealership. I'm getting a paycheck, and I'm getting a place to live, or I'm renting a room from someone, and then I can't pay the rent the second month in a row. That's the problem with apartment leases, right? Is that they want you to pay them every month, right? Which is difficult for me. It's just difficult. 24 years old, and I can't get a job, and I got no money, and I got nowhere to go, and my life is falling in pieces, and I know I shouldn't drink, and I know I shouldn't do no drugs, but I can't stop myself. I can't stop myself because of the way that it feels when I'm in a state of abstinence. When I'm not drinking, the world just looks bleak and empty and difficult and alone. And I tell you, the best day that I ever have in a state of abstinence is boring. That's as good as it gets. But I got nowhere to go, and I'm staying at my last friend's house, the last friend I have in the world, and I end up stealing. Well, he called it stealing. People have a way of exaggerating what happens, don't they? What happened was I took some of his stuff without asking him because I needed it, and if he would just open his mind to what that is, it was survival, is what it was. But he asked me to leave his house, and I had nowhere to go, and I ended up at a 7-day detox. I ended up at it's one rung above a homeless shelter. It's a government-funded 7-day indigent jitter joint. And I ended up there, and I spent 7 days in this place, and I looked around there, and I knew as I looked around that there were people in there that really needed to be there. But I'm the national spokesperson for Kenwood. I don't need to be in a place like this. I hadn't had that job for about 3 years at this point. But I'm unable to let go of stuff, I spent 7 days in there, and from there they sent me to a halfway house. And this place was amazing. This place was really very cool. These guys that own this halfway house were just trying to help people. They really were. They would let you move into this place with no job, no money, no prospects, and they'd let you stay there for 2 weeks. And they weren't keeping tab. You didn't owe them the money after 2 weeks for the first 2 weeks' rent. All they asked was that in those 2 weeks, you went out and looked for a job. They'd feed you breakfast and dinner, and they'd let you take sandwiches for lunch. AA members would bring cigarettes into the halfway house when they brought meetings in. It was really fantastic. If you found a job in the first 2 weeks, they gave you another 2 weeks to wait for that first paycheck. And so you'd end up there for 30 days for free, and you didn't owe them the back money as long as you were trying to do the best. The charity of these guys was unbelievable. Unbelievable guys. And I stayed at this halfway house until I was about 23 days sober. And at about 23 days sober, I woke up one morning, and it occurred to me that I didn't know who the hell these people were trying to tell me what time I had to be home. All right? I'm a grown man, for God's sakes, right? Nobody took me to that halfway house. I got there all by myself. I took myself as if it was Harvard, right? Right? I took myself there. Well, good for you, right? They wanted me to do a chore. My wife wants me to do chores. I mean, come on. 21 years sober, she can't get that. I'm just kidding. I left that halfway house because inside of me when I'm sober, something happens to me that is very difficult to explain. But maybe you've experienced this yourself. When I put down the bag and the bottle, inside of me what happens is I get empty. I get afraid. I don't really know that I'm afraid. What I really feel like is I'm just I got to defend myself, and I got to protect myself, and I kind of get on the muscle just a little bit. I mean, I'm not a tough guy. I'm not going around fighting nobody, but I'm looking to make sure that everybody's doing the right thing. I'm a judger. I pay attention to what's going on, and I know whether or not you're doing the right thing. And this will surprise you. You never are. You never are. I'm keenly aware of my circumstances and my situation, and I'm keenly aware of how I feel. And how I feel is like I don't fit in. I think I know what you're thinking, and I know you're thinking about me. When you're up in the corner in your little huddle, and you're talking, and then all of a sudden you burst out into laughter, I know who you're laughing at. I know. I start to think about all the things that I've done. I start to think about the look in my mom's face the last time I Last time she caught me with my hand in her purse. The look on my dad's face last time I came home drunk and spilled something or broke something when he let me back in his house one more time. The boss that had that look of disgust on his face when he was trying to balance out my expense account and there was no way to make the numbers add up. Or when I didn't show up one more time. The girl that I'd let down, the friends that I'd disappointed. I start to think about what a piece of garbage I am. I start to think about what you must think about me, and I know that you're right. I start to lose that ability to breathe that I found in the back of that wooded area when I was 9 years old starts to vanish and disappear, and I start to get uptight. My head starts to tell me something. It starts to talk to me. It starts to say things like, you could have a drink, you could have one. You know the answer, just have a drink, you can have one. Have one drink, it's no big deal, you can have a drink. You've been sober a long time, Sheldon. You've been sober for 6, 7 days. You can have one, just have one, you can do it, have a drink. Just have a drink, have a drink. And I'm telling myself I'm not going to have a drink. Why would I have a drink? It would be crazy for me to have a drink. You know what happened last time I had a drink? I'm not going to have another drink. That would be insane. You can have one. It's just one. It's no harm. My emotions get on me in a way that I can't stand it. My stomach tightens up and my fists clench and I'm trying to get through this world and I'm trying to do the right thing. And I just can't. I can't imagine what it would be like for me not to drink. And so I go have a drink. Now, I'm not going to go out and get drunk. That is not my goal. I do not want to get drunk. Why would I get drunk? I mean, seriously, when you think about what happened last time I got drunk, I'm not an idiot. There are idiots in this world, and you, most of you, some of you qualify. But I'm not one of them. I'm not an idiot. I'm not going to go get drunk. I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm just going to go take the edge off. Right? I'm just going to go take the edge off. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go out and I'm going to have one. Maybe 2. 3 at the most. No more than 4. I'm just going to go out and you know what it is that I just need something to be able to breathe. I just need to be able to relax a little bit. I just need to be able, that's all I'm looking for. That's all I'm looking for. And so I go out to have 1, maybe 2. 3 at the most. No more than 4. And something happens that I can't account for. It's like we call it this weird mental blank spot, but something happens to me when I go out and I have just a couple of drinks that all of a sudden the next thing you know, I wind up completely blotto again. I wind up doing it again. I'm the do it again guy. I don't know if there's any people in here that do it again, but I'm the do it again guy. I'm the guy that doesn't show up for work again. I'm the guy that spends the rent money again. I'm the guy that steals from his friends again. I'm the guy that embarrasses himself again. I'm the guy that takes it across the line beyond where it should go. I'm the guy that does it again. And I never meant to do that. I just wanted to have 1, maybe 2. 3 at the most. No more than 4. No more than 4. And one more time I come crawling back in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I try to explain to you guys what's going on with me, and I don't know, I feel like I'm the only person that feels that way, right? Somehow AA looks to me like a funny place. AA looks to me like a place where people come to Alcoholics Anonymous and maybe they drank too much. Maybe they did. I don't know. I wasn't there. You got to kind of believe them. They got funny stories. They talk about jail and divorce and losing jobs. You kind of want to believe that they drank like I drank, right? But they say this thing that makes no sense. It sounds like they say to my ears, that, hi, my name's Sheldon, I'm an alcoholic, I used to drink an awful lot, I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, quit drinking, and now my life's wonderful. Thanks for letting me share. So it sounds like they say. And I'm not drinking. I've been sober now 3 days. 3 days. Do you have any idea how long 3 days is? Let me tell you something. 3 days is a lot longer than 21 years. Let me just tell you that. I mean, it just is, right? I've been sober 3 days, and I got that thing on me. I got that. I'm looking around the room. I'm looking around Alcoholics Anonymous, and I just see a bunch of idiots. Just a bunch of self-righteous, happy, clappy, my life's wonderful idiots. Doing that thing, you know that thing that you do, that thing that you just keep doing, it's relentless, that breathing. My head's on me, telling me that I'm stupid and I'm no good and I can't believe I did it again and what's the matter with you and you're just a puke, you're just worthless, you're just stupid. You know what? You have ruined everything good in your life and you will continue to ruin everything good in your life and you may as well drink. You know what? You should have a drink because at least when you have a drink, at least your head slows down. You are pathetic. You don't fit here, you don't belong here with these nice, clean people. So you know what you should do? You should have a drink. And then that next voice. Have a drink, have a drink, have a drink. You can have a drink. Just have a drink. Just have one. You can have one. Just have one. 2 at the most. No more than 3. 4. Absolute outside. You can do it. Have one. Just have one. You deserve one. You've been working hard. You've been sober a long time. You can have one. And these 2 competing voices are going on. And then the third one comes in. They don't like you. They've never liked you. Why would they like you? You don't fit here. You don't belong here. And I'm empty and I'm vacant inside. And you guys tell me what you think is good news. And it's not good news. It's one of the cruelest things we say to newcomers, that you say it to me. You say, Sheldon, we're really glad you're here. You know what? If you come to Alcoholics Anonymous, if you go to meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, and if you do that, you get a sponsor, work the steps, you be of service, you do that, you do Alcoholics Anonymous, as if your life depends on it. Guess what? You can stay sober for the rest of your life. No! And if I tell you, I say, I can't do that. I can't stay sober for the rest of my life. It's just ridiculous. You come up with this. This is my favorite thing. You say, Sheldon, you don't have to worry about the rest of your life. In Alcoholics Anonymous, we stay sober 1 day at a time. Which to you sounds good. To me, it sounds like a prison sentence. You're going to stay sober 1 day at a time. 1 long, miserable, painful day at a time. 24 suffering hours, all in a row, at a time. And God help me if I say anything about that, because then you come up with the creme de la creme. You say, well, if you can't do it 1 day at a time, you know what you should do? You should do it 1 hour at a time. 60 agonizing minutes. You can almost hear the second hand on the clock, can't you? Tick, tick, tick. Because I have no point of reference of what it feels like to be sober a bunch of time in Alcoholics Anonymous with a home group and a sponsor, working the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, actively involved in service, sponsoring guys, having gone through this process, having done an inventory, having started to make some amends, trying to live a spiritual life in 10 and 11. I have no idea of how amazing of a life you're promising me. I think what you're promising me is that I get to stay sober 1 day at a time, feeling 10 days sober forever. Forever. That's what I think you offer. I think you offer agony on the installment plan. I think we're going to sit together in meetings for the next 20 years and look at each other, and every now and again we're going to catch each other's eye and have a truthful moment, and we're going to go, it's no wonder I drink again, right? And my head's on me, and my head's on me, and my head's on me, and I feel empty, and I feel disconnected, and I feel separate, and I drink again, and I explain to you guys what's going on, and I tell you, this makes no sense to me, because when I'm drinking, what happens is I go out for a drink, and then I end up drunk. And I don't understand it, and you guys explain to me that, Sheldon, what you have is you have this thing called the phenomenon of craving. That when you start to drink, you have no control over the amount you take. In fact, you will drink against your will, which doesn't really, in my experience, feel right. It feels right now that I've learned the Alcoholics Anonymous lexicon and I know what it is you guys mean. But it's not really my experience that I drink against my will. Here's what that sounds like to me. It sounds like to me I get a bottle of scotch, crack it open, pour a drink, take a couple of shots, put the bottle down. Then the bottle grows arms and legs. grabs me by the throat, throws me down on the counter, and starts pouring itself in my throat. And the whole time I'm screaming, "Stop! Stop! I'm an alcoholic, for God's sakes," right? It's not my experience. My experience is that I have one, maybe two, three at the most, no more than four. No more than four. And then the phenomenon of craving hits like this. I change my mind. That is the power of the phenomenon of craving, is that I have that third or fourth drink and I change my mind. And it seems to me to be a good idea for me to have number 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I've never taken a drink that I did not think was a good idea. The problem for me is that what is absolutely ridiculous seems like a good idea. That I consciously, purposely make the decision against all odds to have that next drink. That's how the phenomenon of craving shows up in my life. Well, then why can't I stop altogether? Why can't I put it down and not have a drink? Why can't I just be the guy that says, "That's it, I quit"? Why can't I do that? In a state of abstinence, this second personality that I have shows up. I like to call him Sheldon the Mope. Sheldon the Mope shows up. "How you doing?" "Fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm really glad I'm sober." I'm like I quote the big book and don't know I'm quoting it. "I'm working better, feeling better, having a better time." My head's telling me, "You can have one, you can have one. Put the color back in the life. You deserve it, you can have one. Nobody likes you, nobody cares, you don't fit." And I'm stuck. And my life is unmanageable. My life is unmanageable, drunk or sober. And when I'm drinking, my life is obviously unmanageable because I spend all the money I spend the rent money on drugs and alcohol. My life is unmanageable when I'm drinking because I don't show up for work. My life is unmanageable when I'm drinking because I got another ticket that I didn't pay. My life is unmanageable when I'm drinking because I disappoint my friends and my family and my parents. My life is unmanageable when I'm drinking because when I'm drinking, I'm a slob. It's easy for me to see the unmanageability when I'm drinking. But in a state of abstinence, my life is unmanageable because the way my emotions attack me. My life is unmanageable when I'm sober, when I'm in a state of abstinence, because Sheldon the Mope shows up and the voices in my head drive me back to the very thing that I know is going to kill me. And this is how I show up at Alcoholics Anonymous on July 17th of 1996, not for my first time, but probably for my 100th time. I started trying to get sober in 1993, and I'm a guy that gets a week, maybe 10 days. Sometimes I get drunk the same day I show up. I've had the same sobriety date before multiple times. And the way you do that is you wake up in the morning and you decide, today I'm not drinking, and you go to AA to the 8 a.m. meeting and you raise your hand and you say, "I'm an alcoholic," and everybody rallies around and you have a conversation with an old timer and you decide you're never going to drink again, and then you leave the meeting and you go home and get drunk. And you pass out. And you come to, and about 6 o'clock you go to another meeting, and you get sober again in the same day, right? So I've had this same sobriety date multiple times, right? Sometimes I get drunk that same day, sometimes I get 2, 3 days, sometimes I get a week, sometimes I get 10 days. I got 30 days twice, and I lied about 60 days once. And I can't stop drinking. And July 17th of 96, I showed up at a place called the Kiss Club, and inside me I felt more dead than alive. Inside me I had lost all hope. Inside me I knew the future. The future was that I was going to continue to drink the way I was drinking. And I was broken. And on that day, or within a few days after that, at a noon meeting, and I'll never forget like it was yesterday, my sponsor showed up. And you guys will get to hear my sponsor coming up in the next session. But my sponsor showed up. And he started to talk about something that I'm sure had been talked about before, but I hadn't been listening. I'm sure it had been mentioned before, and I hadn't been listening. What he started to talk about was not the problem of drinking, but the problem of sobriety. Not the problem of drinking over and over again, but the problem of what it feels like for me to stay sober, and that there was a solution for that. And I went up and I asked him for help, and he told me he would be my sponsor, and we started on a journey of the steps. And it was pretty obvious and pretty plain to me from living my life the way I've been living that step one, once we had a brief conversation and were able to put some terms and some words to the things that I was feeling, it was pretty obvious to me that I had this thing, that I was stuck. I was in what he calls a trap I couldn't spring. But the problem for me was that his solution seemed like something I just could not do. The problem for me was that his solution seemed absolutely impossible. His solution was that I was supposed to find God. Are you kidding me? God. Just, first of all, it seems hokey and ridiculous. Secondly, it seems impossible. It just makes no sense to me. If God is the answer to my problem, there is no answer to my problem, right? I mean, first of all, I told you that I grew up in a Jewish home. It's not really true. I grew up in an atheist Jewish home. Now, what that means is that we're Jews, but we know we're wrong. We did all the ritual stuff. We did all the high holidays and the get dressed up and go to temple stuff, but there was no real spirit in our home. There was no real faith in our home. It wasn't my mom's fault. It was just the way that she'd been raised and the way that her parents had been raised, that our religion had become a religion of tradition and a religion of ritual and not a religion of deep faith. The other thing that I'll tell you is that we knew we were wrong, but we also knew that the only people on the planet that were more wrong than us was our crazy Christian neighbors. Now, I just want to point out that some of you laughed at the Jew joke and you didn't laugh at the Christian joke. If you fall into that category, you got work yet to be done. But I can't do the faith of my childhood, and I can't do the faith of my childhood for many reasons. And one of the reasons is because when my mom and dad got divorced, I was 2 years old. When my mom and dad got divorced, we moved from a really nice middle-class Jewish neighborhood to Section 8 housing in the middle of the projects. And there's a lot of anti-Semitism in the north of England in that time. England it's a different culture, and there was a lot of prejudice and a lot of anti-Semitism. All the Jews lived in a very small area together. We would joke that it was a shtetl that we would live in, and we couldn't afford to live in the shtetl. We had to live in the non-Jewish neighborhood, and I got in a lot of fights, and there was a lot of problems, and I felt like that community turned its back on me. I felt like an outcast from that community. Whether I was or I wasn't, it didn't matter. Whether it was true or it was false, it didn't matter. That's the way that it felt. But I did go back to that community every day because I went to a Jewish day school there. And in that Jewish day school, I felt like, and whether it was true or it wasn't, it didn't matter. It felt to me like they all knew. What did they know? They knew that I was the charity case. It was a private school, and we were given free tuition there because we were the poor little divorced family from the wrong side of the tracks, and I felt like they all knew. And I felt judged by them, and I couldn't connect with that Jewish community. And there was a teacher there, a guy called Alfred Israel, and he was mean and he was violent. And in England at that time, in the 1970s, they had the legal right to be violent in schools, and he took that permission, and he was mean. And I hated Jews because of him. And I couldn't do the Jewish community, but I couldn't do the Christian deal either. You know, when you're raised up in a faith, when you're raised up the way, imagine for a minute if you were getting sober, say, in a Muslim country, and everybody in the room, you knew that 90% of them were Muslim, and they said, God as he may express himself in the group conscience. You might think you knew who they meant, whether they said it or not. And I felt like I couldn't do the faith of my childhood, and I couldn't do the faith in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'd been going in and out for 3 years, and I felt like there was no solution for me. I am so grateful that Alcoholics Anonymous is not an extension of anybody's faith. And I think that we have an obligation, we have a duty to make sure that we protect Alcoholics Anonymous for the people with different faiths of our own, that we keep it a safe place for people that don't believe the way we believe. We have an obligation and a duty to do that. But I can't do my faith and I can't do your faith, and I'm stuck. And I'm stuck, and when my sponsor tells me I need to find God, I feel like it's over for me. I can't do it. There is no way for me to break through this barrier that is this block. blockage that is stopping me. How am I going to do that? How am I going to get, I could lie to you, right? I've done that. I could lie to you, and as my sponsor says, it wouldn't be the first time I'd been the hypocrite, right? But I could lie to you. But this seems more important than that. This feels like life and death. This feels like this isn't something that I can play with. And I told him, I said, I can't do God. If God's the answer, there is no answer. I tried God. Come on. There was this guy, Tom, I never forget this guy. He was an AA member, and he was also a very devout Christian. And he would bring me spiritual books all the time. He brought me the big book. He brought me some biblical stuff, because he knew that I was a bad drunk. And one time he said to me, he said, I got this thing, he called it the sinner's prayer. He said, you should take this thing home with you, and if you ever feel desperate enough, like you really want help, if you mean it, you have to really mean it, but if you mean it and you do this sinner's prayer, God will come into your life in a drastic and meaningful way. This guy brought me, he meant what he was saying. He had me sold. I took this thing home, and I get home, and a couple of 3 days later, I'm having one of those episodes. I'm in the shower, and the reality of my situation's on me, and I start to cry, and I'm weeping, and life's just snot bubbles, the whole thing, right? So I get out of the shower and I go, where's that sinner's prayer? And I grab the sinner's prayer and I put a towel on the bathroom floor, and I've got this thing, and I kneel down and water's dripping off me. Now, if you're picturing this, picture me clothed. I wasn't, but it's a much better picture, right? And I say this sinner's prayer, and I pray this prayer, and I meant it like I'd never meant anything in my life. I meant it. And I get done with this prayer, and I'm like, nothing. Nothing changed. I don't know what I expected, right? Harp music, or, the light, the room to get bright, Gabriel to be there going, you did good, my son. We shall now change thou. All right? But I get done with that prayer, and then it's still me. Still here, still feeling like this. So when you tell me God's the answer, I can't get there from here. My sponsor says, I want you to start asking people in AA how they're sober, why they're sober. Well, I don't want to do that, because I already know. It's almost like they hand it out on the back of a business card. If anybody ever asks you why you're sober, just say this, right? What do you say? Why are you sober? I'm sober today because of a power greater than myself that I found in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I would just like to take a moment to thank AA for God, and I'd like to thank God for AA. And I don't really mean to goof on that, because if you're new and you ask me, I got to tell you that I'm sober today because of a power greater than myself that I found in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And if I ever get to meet the big guy, I'm going to say, Pops, that world thing of yours, pretty cool, man. Dig the sunsets and the pretty girls, right? It's all kind. But that AA thing, I want to thank you for that, Pops. That was a big one for me. But I go and ask people, and I come, oh, it's all because of God, So let me ask you, if you could find God in step 2 or in step 3, if you could find God in step 2 or step 3, why would you do step 4? Seriously. It sucks, right? Someone's going to talk about step 4 later, and they're going to make it seem like sexy and wonderful, but it's not, and it isn't. It sucks, right? Nobody wants to. First of all, nobody understands it. You go to 10 meetings, and you get 10 different ways to do it. It's written in the book, right? But still, there's 10 different ways. There are 4-column 4 steps. There are 5-column 4 steps. I do a 6-column 4 step. No one can agree on how to do it, right? Step 5, embarrassing and humiliating. 6 and 7, nobody understands 6 and 7. Nobody. 8 and 9, very expensive. Right? Seriously, right? If you could find God in step 2 or step 3, why would you write 1 amends check? 1. I wouldn't. 10 and 11 are so bizarre that half the people in the room today think they're doing step 10 when they're really doing step 11. Some of you are nodding. Some of you are confused. confused people get with the nodders. You'll go, oh my God, I never noticed that. Right? It doesn't change anything. It's all semantics. You're sober. Keep doing what you're doing. But it's interesting that we don't know, right? Step 12? Don't worry about step 12. If you have happened to you what happened to me, they won't be able to stop you. They won't be able to stop you. But why the hell would you do any of that stuff if you could find God in step 2 or step 3? So what is step 2 for a guy like me? My sponsor took me to the Big Book, and in the Big Book on page 47, step 2 is asked in one simple question. It says we had to ask but one simple question. Do you now believe? And the answer is no, I don't. I don't believe. I do not believe in God. I don't believe in God. No, I don't. I know my life depends on it, but I don't believe in God. There's absolutely no way for me to believe in God. No. Stop asking. No, I don't believe in God. No, I get it. You don't believe in God. I don't believe in God. I do not believe in God. He says it's a comma, not a period. Can we read the rest of the sentence? Do you now believe, or are you even willing to believe in a power greater than yourself? What does that mean? Even willing to believe that maybe there might be. Is it possible? I mean, it's unlikely, right? I dig it. The whole thing sounds like a fantasy. But is it possible that maybe there might be a God? No, maybe. I don't know. No, yes. I don't know. What are you asking me? Are you asking me if I believe in God? No, I'm not asking you if you believe in God. I don't care if you believe in God. I'm asking you, is it possible that there might be a God? Unlikely as it is, but maybe. Even possible that maybe there might be a God. Possibly. I don't even want to commit to that. Is it possible that maybe there might be a God? I mean, is it okay if I say to you it's unlikely, and I don't believe in God, and if you push me and make me make a commitment one way or the other right now, the answer is no, but I am willing to say that it is slightly possible on an outside chance that maybe there might be a God. It's unlikely, and I want you to know it's unlikely. But I suppose it's possible. Even willing to believe. To be willing to believe in God means you don't believe in Him. That is what the definition of that sentence is. I don't believe in Him, but I'm willing to. I'm interested in doing the work to find out whether or not He's there. That is what willing to believe means. You're no longer willing to believe. Once you believe, then you believe. Am I even willing to believe? The book says, as soon as a man can say that he does believe, which I didn't, or is even willing to believe, which I suppose I was, we emphatically assure him he's on his way. What does that mean? Emphatically, like, yeah, baby, you're done, in the bag. Woohoo! Step 2, safe. So in other words, if you came here this morning and you were working on step 2, we just did it. Now what? Say the prayer. Say the goddamn prayer. Write the list. Just write the list and share the list. Don't worry about 6 and 7. Nobody understands 6 and 7. 8 and 9, they don't want your money. They don't. They want their money back. No big deal. 10 and 11, just keep doing it. What you just did, do it again. Don't sweat it. Just keep going. Just keep going. And if you'll do that, what might happen, what possibly could happen, what you won't believe, what the magic is, that if I will do the work that comes after step 2, that somewhere in step 12, I might wake up and I might go, you know, against my will, in the middle of the night, when I wasn't watching, God snuck in. And I don't even know when it happened. I don't even I've tried to trace back to remember how long I was sober when this occurred, and I can't pinpoint. It was somewhere between 3 and 6 years sober. Somewhere between 3 and 6 years sober. Sponsor has a meeting at his house on a Tuesday night. And I'm driving up towards his house on a Tuesday night. And as I'm about a couple of miles to get up the freeway, and there's 2 miles of a hill that drives up to his house, I start to cry. By the time I get to his house, I'm weeping. I get out of the car and I go in his house, and he goes, "What's wrong with you?" Because he's kind that way. He didn't really say it like that. I'm sorry, it was more like, "What's wrong with you?" I said, "Nothing." "What's going on?" And I said, "It's real. It's real and it's true. It's real and what's real? What's true? God's real. God's true." I don't know when it happened. What I did was I did what I was told to do. I got off the debating team. I quit questioning whether or not God existed and started looking for evidence that God might exist. I started to treat people the way a spiritual person would treat them, with principles in his life. I started to be kind at work, kind to the people I work with, do my job, show up on time. I started to act as if God might exist. That's what he told me to do, to act as if God might exist, to take the actions that a man that believed in God would take, even though you don't believe in God, to get up in the morning and pray, and at night before you went to bed, thank him for your sobriety, to treat his kids with respect, to try and help people, to try and live like you would live if you knew God was real, to act as if. And I started doing that, and my life started to make sense. And it took several years for me to wake up one day, and more step work and going through the process and active involvement in Alcoholics Anonymous. And one day I woke up and I was like the guy out of the big book. I woke up to be able to tell you the central fact of my life. The central fact of my life is that there is a power greater than myself that runs through this universe that's on my side. And my purpose in life is to tell you the story of how I went from there to here. How a broken man with no faith and no connection ended up with a God in his life that allows him to breathe and to live and to be an active, useful member of society. I'm glad to be here this weekend. I'm really grateful for the ability to share my story with you. I hope that you get the opportunity to share your story with yet another sufferer of how you were able to get connected to God. And if you're new and you're at the beginning of your journey, I'm excited for you. I'm excited for you to walk this broad highway that we walk together, for you to find your connection to the power, for you to plug into what I plugged into here. Thank you for letting me share.
The turtleneck's back.